The words sliced through the dusty silence of the old workshop like a stray beam of sunlight breaking into a dark room. Tamar Rourke, a broad-shouldered mechanic with grease still drying on his knuckles, froze where he stood. He had only turned around because he'd felt something, a shift in the air, like someone watching him, yet nothing could have prepared him for the frail little figure standing just inside the open doorway. She was thin enough that the light coming from behind seemed to outline her small bones, her cheeks hollow but her hazel eyes burning with a warmth that felt strange in a place as empty as his life had become. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, though the tired slump in her shoulders made her look older somehow. She repeated herself softly, trembling, "If you carry me up the stairs, I'll tell you a secret." Before the story continues, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of simple good deeds, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Light of Kindness. It helps stories like this reach more hearts. Tamar swallowed hard, uncertain why a child was in his workshop at all. He lived alone above it in a cramped loft accessible by a narrow metal staircase. He barely let delivery guys come near it, let alone mysterious children making strange requests. But there was something about her voice, a fragile steadiness mixed with fear, that pinned him in place. For years, Tamar had carried burdens heavier than any engine block, guilt, regret, and a loneliness that clung to him like oil that never washed off. He wasn't the man he'd once hoped to be. He'd made too many mistakes, spoken too harshly to the people who loved him, pushed away friends, and drifted through life with his head down. He'd lost his younger brother in an accident he still believed was his fault, and ever since then, life had felt like a constant attempt to hide from the world and from himself. So he stared at the girl with a mixture of confusion and fear, because both fate and small children had a way of seeing through the cracks people tried to cover up. He asked no questions. Instead, he stepped closer, moving slowly, as though sudden movement might cause her to vanish. She didn't flinch. Her tiny hands were clasped in front of her chest as if she were praying not for help but for courage. When he knelt, she allowed him to lift her, her body lighter than a sack of old rags. Up close, Tamar could feel the heat radiating from her skin, feverish, unwell. Her breath was shallow, her heartbeat fluttery against his chest. He hesitated, but she rested her head on his shoulder, trusting him in a way that made his throat tighten. The metal stairs groaned beneath his boots as he climbed. The sunlight pouring through the loft windows flooded the space in bright yellows and warm whites, making dust float in the air like drifting memories. Tamar gently laid her down on the old couch near the window, the springs creaking beneath her weight. She winced slightly but didn't complain, just looked up at him with those leaf-colored eyes that seemed too wise for a child. "My name is Arya," she whispered, her voice a rustle of wind through leaves. "And I'm not supposed to be here." Tamar sat on the floor beside her, elbow resting on the edge of the couch. He did not speak, he simply waited, which surprised him. He had never been patient with anyone, not even himself. But something about Arya calmed the restless ache in him. Arya told him that she lived a few blocks away, in a decaying house squeezed between two abandoned stores. Her grandmother, who had raised her, had fallen very ill. Social workers had started visiting, and Arya feared they would take her away to a place where no one knew her, where she'd be just another kid in a crowded system. So she had wandered outside that morning, following the sound of clinking metal and humming machinery until she found the workshop. Something told her she would be safe here. Something told her Tamar would listen. And Tamar did. For the first time in years, he listened fully. Days turned into a slow blur. Arya kept returning to the workshop, sometimes too exhausted to speak, sometimes bright enough to sit on the work table while Tamar repaired engines. He started leaving the door unlocked just for her. At first, he told himself that he was only letting her stay because she looked sick and vulnerable, because someone needed to keep an eye on her. But as the days warmed into a tender ritual, her quiet presence like a soft wind weaving through the dusty emptiness of his life, he realized she was healing something inside him he didn't know was still alive. Arya would watch him work, asking questions about every tool and engine part, absorbing the information with genuine fascination. Tamar found himself speaking more than he had in years, explaining things with a gentle patience he never thought he'd had. She would smile, sometimes small and tired, sometimes bright enough to make the whole workshop glow. But there were days when she couldn't hide how sick she was. One afternoon, the sun was gold and soft, spreading across the workshop floor like warm syrup. Tamar had been replacing a carburetor when Arya suddenly collapsed against the tool cabinets. He rushed to her, heart pounding, and realized just how frail she was. Her breathing rattled, her skin clammy. He lifted her again, feeling how weak she'd become. As he carried her up the stairs once more, she clung to him just as she had the first day. At the top, she whispered, "You're strong, like my brother used to be. But you're gentler." Tamar's chest tightened. He hadn't allowed himself to be compared to anyone's brother in years. It felt like both a wound and a blessing. She slowly grew worse. Her visits became shorter, her cough heavier, her steps shakier. Tamar took her to clinics when she collapsed, though she always begged him, voice trembling, "Don't let them take me away. Please." And he didn't. He held her hand through every exam and every painful injection, his rough fingers steady against her small trembling ones. Doctors said she had a severe infection worsened by chronic malnutrition and stress. It was treatable, if she had stability, rest, and proper care. That night, Tamar realized something terrifying: he cared about her. Not in the distant, reluctant way he had expected, he cared about her fiercely, protectively, like she was family. And the responsibility of that love weighed on him. So he made changes. He cleaned the loft for the first time in years, airing it out until it felt like sunlight could breathe there again. He stocked the fridge with groceries he didn't know how to prepare. He set a small mattress near his own bed in case she needed to stay overnight. Without meaning to, he built a home around her presence. And one morning, after weeks of sickness and struggle, Arya looked a little stronger. Her eyes had a spark again. She sat up slowly and took Tamar's hand with a tiny smile. "That secret I promised you," she whispered, "I'm ready to tell it now." Tamar felt a strange stillness wash over him. He had forgotten the promise entirely. His heart thudded as she took a breath, her fingers brushing the old scar on his forearm. "My grandma used to say that everyone gets one miracle," Arya said. "But most people miss theirs because they're too busy looking in the wrong places. She said the miracle is usually a person, and usually someone who thinks they're broken." Her voice trembled with emotion, but she didn't look away. "You were my miracle. You saved me when I had no one. You carried me when I couldn't stand. You listened when no one else cared. You helped me live." Tamar's vision blurred. His chest ached in a way that felt like healing and breaking at the same time. "But you saved me too," he whispered hoarsely, surprising himself with the truth of it. Arya nodded weakly and leaned into him. The moment felt suspended, like the world paused to listen. Weeks later, after months of treatment, meals, stability, and the warmth of having someone who truly cared, Arya began to recover. Her cheeks filled out, her laugh returned, and she ran up the workshop stairs instead of being carried. Her grandmother eventually stabilized as well, and social workers approved Tamar as a temporary guardian. Turns out he was exactly the safe place Arya needed. Tamar's world didn't just brighten, it reformed. He fixed cars, he made breakfast, he learned how to braid hair poorly, and he let himself feel alive again. And each day, Arya would run into the workshop, her voice ringing like sunlight. "Tamar, look. I'm strong enough to race you now." And he raced her. He lost sometimes on purpose, sometimes honestly. If this story has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps stories of hope and second chances find more people who need them.